Hello, everyone, and welcome to Making the Winning Calls with Oracle. This is a virtual race viewing party of a selected race from Season 2 of SailGP. I'm Mindy Bach with Oracle. The exciting race you're about to experience features the Great Britain SailGP Team presented by Ineos and their dominating victory in the first race of the season in the beautiful and iconic Sydney Harbour. What was even more exciting for the British about this win is that it came over the reigning champions from Season 1, Australia SailGP, in their home waters. Now, in just moments, helmsman Ben Ainslie, as well as data performance analyst Emily Nagel, will take us through the exciting moments and data-driven insights from that race. Now, of course, their success is fueled by athleticism, quick thinking, and seasoned leadership, but the Oracle Cloud was also hard at work. Now, if you're not familiar, what is unique about SailGP is that each of the 7 fast-foiling F50 catamarans is equipped with hundreds of sensors. During every SailGP race, each boat generates more than 2.5 million data points. The teams can use that data to make decisions during the race and also in their post-race analysis. Now, each of those boats, if you put that all together from the fleet, that's a quick calculation of 17.5 million data points minimum. Now, by way of the Oracle Cloud infrastructure, all that information from each boat is provided to each team. So there are no secrets. They can learn from their competitors and the decisions they're making with the data and on the course. But all of that data is also provided to race officials and the SailGP app, all in less than 150 milliseconds. That's faster than the blink of an eye. So we're going to learn how Ben and his crew combine their skill on the water with the information that Emily provides them from the data by way of Oracle technology to make their winning calls. Now, if you have any questions during the event, please, I urge you to put them in the dialog box below so we can answer them after Ben and Emily join us. Once again, welcome to Making the Winning Calls with Oracle. I am pleased to introduce the most decorated Olympic sailor of all time, the helmsman of Great Britain SailGP, Sir Ben Ainslie, as well as the team's data analyst, Emily Nagel. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to go through this race with the both of you. Ben, you're a very accomplished sailor. You have 5 Olympic medals. You've won an America's Cup. What was the lure for you to join SailGP in its second season?
Hi, Mindy. I mean, the draw for SailGP was, I wasn't racing in the first season, but watched it and was just, enthralled by the action and seeing how these boats had developed, the circuit, the races, the locations they were going to, the closeness of the racing. And, as a racing sailor myself, wanted to be, you want to be racing at the highest level. And so I got in touch with Russell Coutts, who's the CEO of SailGP, and, very basic, how to get some of the action. And so we hammered out a deal and got involved, and I had to say it's one of the best things I've ever done.
Yeah, I think the British are very happy you joined their F50 as well. The results, as you'll see, have been simply fun and amazing. Emily, this is your second season with the team. How much more adept are you at finding and deciphering that information that you need quickly during a race, knowing of all the information, the millions of information points that we just mentioned?
It's definitely gotten easier as time's gone on. It was definitely a learning curve in the first season, mostly just getting used to the different trends to kind of pick up on and narrow down all of those channels to, what the sailors are actually interested in versus the, 2,000 channels we have available. And also learning all the intricacies of the 50s. I mean, I've worked with them previously during the Cup, but the amount of changes that have been made to the control systems on board, the foils themselves, the wings, it's huge, and it affects the way that the sailors are sailing the boat. So finding all those little changes and get every knot of speed we can.
Well, the data, the skill, and the beautiful F50s, they all came together beautifully in the inaugural race of Season 2 of SailGP. Let's go out to the waters in Sydney and see how everything unfolded once again. Ben, what were your thoughts and kind of your strategies heading to the starting line for your first race in your SailGP career?
Well, you're right. It was a big day because it was completely new conditions for compared to what we'd been training up in the build up to the racing, and different wind direction, much stronger wind conditions. So we had a different setup in the boat. We were able to switch between different foil configurations, and that's defined to us by the race organisers. And so rather than sailing on the bigger foils that we had been in the practice days, we were now sailing on the smaller foils, which are faster, but they're harder to maneuver the boat, to control the boat. So my biggest concern was actually how are we gonna handle the boat, pull off the maneuvers, the tacks, and the jibes and the mark roundings, and that's obviously critical to having a good race. And then on top of that was the performance of the boat. What sort of target speed should we be looking at? And then thirdly, the conditions themselves. We had this island, Shark Island, in the middle of the race course, which meant that quite often you were getting a split from the opposition, and that doesn't happen that much in racing sailing, in inshore racing sailing like this anyway. So there was a lot to take in not that much time. And that's where, Emily came in, was critical in terms of the data, helping myself and the other guys on the boat understand what sort of performance we should be targeting from the boat. So that saved us a lot of time in terms of the preparation there. And then it really just came down to trying to work on the maneuvers in the short time we had preparing before the start of the race, and trying to understand the conditions, what side of the course we thought was going to pay.
Yeah, I know that the 2 days of practice you had leading up to this opening race, the conditions were fairly calm. Emily, how does your job change when you wake up on race morning and you have gusty and shifty and changing winds? Does it change what you're looking at?
It doesn't quite change what exactly I'm looking at, but more the numbers I'm expecting. So when we've got the smaller foils on, like Ben said, maneuvers change. The rate of turn is slightly different. The settings we're dropping the boards at change as well. So it's just noticing kind of how we're adapting to those conditions, making sure that the guys have kind of switched their mindset from the light air boards to these high-speed boards.
Yeah, well, as we see the boats heading toward the starting line, Ben, you talk about everything that you're taking in and you're really trying to adjust to these F50s, but you were said to be very calm on this day. Is that true? Did you feel as calm as everyone thought you looked?
Maybe it was just the moments the camera picked come to our boat. There was one moment actually on the first upwind leg where we had a bit of a bad tack, and I got my leg caught around one of the harness lines, and my voice might be raised momentarily. But other than that, actually, the team did a brilliant job. I think our maneuvers are generally very good. More than often than not, we were on the right side of the course, and our speed was good. And put all that together, we had a fantastic day.
Yeah, well, you can see the information right here on the screen. This is a user-friendly version that you can get on the SailGP app. It's going to show the wind speed and the ride height. But Emily, your digital dashboard looks very different. So what are you focused on at the beginning of the race? What are you looking for on your dashboard?
So my dashboard has kind of a number of different channels. A lot of them are just squiggly lines. But we're focused a lot on the different rudder settings and time and distance towards the line, where we're set up. So often I've kind of got the map up, trying to see where everyone's positioned. And a lot of the time it's just looking at true wind speed, true wind angle, and boat speed, just to make sure, everyone's up and going, and trying to see where everyone's going to end up in the next 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, in the first 30 seconds were very fast. I think Team France Ben got off to a very quick start, hit 45 knots right away. They say the first leg is the most important in this race. So where did you want to be in the start and in the opening moments of this one?
Yeah, so the software had given us a pretty even start line, but we felt that there was a bit of a wind shadow under the Shark Island that we were talking about earlier, and that forced our decision to start a little bit down the line. We had a good start at speed, but the French, like you say, were just that little bit quicker and led at Mark 1. We were second, which we were happy with. I think normally anything in the top three at Mark 1 you're normally reasonably happy with. And then we made a mistake coming down to the bottom gate, and that was really my lack of understanding of the software again, given that hadn't really been functioning in the practice days. And so I was very quickly trying to get up to speed with what that software was telling me from a tactical perspective. And so, as you could probably see from the footage earlier, we missed what we call the ley line, which is the shortest distance that we can get to that gate. We were late compared with the other two boats around us, the French and the American teams. And so we actually lost a bit of ground to the Americans, and we had to go wide around the mark. We're under the rules, we had to give them room. We gave them room. They actually came too high on their foils and slipped sideways quite dramatically, and we had to steer away quite sharply to avoid what would have been a really big impact. And the Americans got a penalty for that move, and that got us up into second place, and then we were off on the upwind leg, and then it was really about then trying to work out where was the best wind on the course, and again trying to dodge that Shark Island in the middle of the course.
Well, Ben, you bring up an interesting point because so much of sailing and the success of it is the feel of the boat, the feel of the conditions. But you mentioned just having to learn the software. So, how's the technology of this boat and these teams affected your sailing?
Well, it was, this was fascinating for me because, like I said, I didn't have that much experience of the tactical software itself. So Ian Jensen, who's our mainsail trimmer on the boat, Goobs is his nickname, through this race, he was pretty much talking me through the software and what it meant. And so actually through the day, we got a lot better. It was a big day out in the water because not only were we all trying to sail the boat as fast as we could, but the guys were trying to help me through this tactical software as well. So yeah, a lot of focus, really good communication. Again, I have to say, having such a strong team around me helped massively in terms of that learning curve and getting the performance that we did.
Yeah, now you saw it just moments ago. It'll come back into your screen. But Shark Island, Emily, as you put so perfectly in the way, right in the middle of the course, so it splits it. You have to decide which side to go on. What did the data show you during this race about which was more advantageous?
Well, the big thing with Shark Island is that because it's slightly further to the left-hand side of the bay, is you get a lot of light air patches in that area. And also with the windward marks so close to the island, it kind of meant that whichever of the marks at the gate you chose dictated which side of the island you would have to go down, which meant you could only go to the favored side of the island realistically once in a full lap. So that meant either the upwind, you were on the bad side, or the downwind, you'd have to be on the bad side. So choosing your timing became quite significant. You see in one of the later races, the US team chose this left-hand side where there was a little less wind for one of the downwind legs, crashed off the foils and just couldn't get back up. So, choosing your moment to get through those light patches could be a massive race decider.
And Ben, do you have to make those strategy decisions before the race even starts, or are they made and adjusted on the water?
Yeah, we try and set a strategy before the start. And so, like I said, we spent quite a lot of time, as much time as we could, in the allocated preparation time to sail the course, get a feel for what we thought would work. But it's not until you really start racing for real that you get a better sense for how it's playing out. And then you might have to adjust that strategy, and then your boat-on-boat tactics come into play as well. And as Emily said, sometimes you're forced into going one, when you go on an island there, you've got to split one way or the other. Sometimes you're forced or dictated to by the other boats, and then you've got to try and make that work as best you can. And other times you're free and you've got the decision, and then you've got to look at the wind on the water and try and weigh it up. And actually in this race we had a really nice lead, and we actually decided late on to split at the top gate, to split to the other side. Right at the last minute we thought we saw some better breeze. And so that's just an indication of how, even though you're out on your own and you're clean, you still have to make very fast, sudden decisions depending on how that wind's developing across the racecourse.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get to that in a moment. Those are one of the questions I wanted to ask you. But here, 3 minutes into the race, the British take the lead and never look back. So how does that change? In essence, obviously you have open waters almost in front of you. How does that change what you're able to do with these boats?
It makes life a lot easier in terms of what I was saying. You're not being dictated to as much by the other boats. In fact, you can start dictating to the other boats, controlling the other boats, at times. And the trick on a day like this, where the wind is so gusty and shifty, you can never, it doesn't matter how big your lead is, you can never be certain of the wind. And so you have to really keep your wits about you in terms of making sure that you're in the best part of the course for the wind. And actually you can get caught out sometimes by trying to, what we call in sailing, covering the opposition. So you put yourself between the opposition and the next mark, and in theory they shouldn't be able to get past you. But when the wind is changing like this and the lead is so big, actually that can work against you, and so you still have to, as I said, make sure you put your boat in the best possible wind and not get too focused on what the guys behind you are doing. Try and let them take each other out of the race, and so just focus on sailing the boat fast and in the best possible wind.
All right, well, right there, we just saw a collision. We talk about it, so anything can happen. Spain and France collided. You see all this data. Emily, you said even though when you're on shore, sometimes you don't see what all the boats are doing. But in your post-race analysis, what did the data show you about that collision between those two F-50s?
Well, this collision was actually quite straightforward and a bit of a misunderstanding on the behalf of the Spanish. There's a rule in place where if a boat reaches the boundary, it's allowed to tack, and the boat kind of pinning it out has to let them go. So here, where Phil Robertson tacked, he thought he was inside the boundary, which would mean France would have to avoid them. So he expected France to take avoiding action, which didn't happen because Phil wasn't actually inside the boundary, so was actually the boat that needed to avoid the French. So a bit of a misunderstanding there, which cost both teams quite a lot.
From steering the boat's perspective, that's a very difficult scenario to be in, because you're trying to, as Emily says, you're trying to weigh up how close you are to that boundary, and then you got this other boat coming in that effectively has the right of way over you when you tack. So it's quite scary, because you've got to really trust in the other boat that they're going to keep clear. And that was just a misunderstanding on where the boundary was, but very easy to happen.
Yeah, and as quick as these boats can turn, they are very maneuverable. Ben, how do you explain to those maybe who are new to SailGP or new to the sport of sailing, just how they handle what these boats are able to do, these catamarans?
They're amazing boats. They are a real privilege to sail. Actually, I've been fortunate to sail most boats in my career, and these are really the best. The performance, the maneuverability, to have a boat that goes, 50 knots, 70 plus kilometers an hour around a course of that size is phenomenal. And when you're maneuvering the boat, so when you're doing a mark rounding or a tack at a jibe at those sorts of speeds, the G-force is significant. It takes you off your feet if you're not holding on. So it takes real choreography and teamwork to be able to get the boat to perform like that. And it's a real thrill when you can do it, and you can do it well in this sort of racing environment.
And I think this is the point right here where you'd mentioned you made a late decision on which mark you wanted to round, and you could see how the boat responded. How much time did you make that change in? How many seconds?
It takes us about 5 seconds to set up for attack. So we made the decision. Well, I ultimately had to make the decision in the end, and the guys responded as quick as they could and very, very well. But we were still a bit wide on that mark because it was such a late decision. But it's hard to know actually when you look back whether or not it was the right call. I mean, we held good breeze down that side of the course, and we maintained our lead. So it wasn't a real race decider for us, but it was just an instinctive decision at the last minute.
Yeah, and Emily, we talked a little bit earlier about ride height with these F50s. What was important about this race, and how did the data determine how high that they wanted the catamaran to be on those foils?
Well, here in Sydney, we're quite lucky because it is so sheltered with kind of this wind direction, wind strength, which meant that it wasn't actually that choppy. So it's fairly flat water, which means you can be quite punchy with the ride height and take it up to 1 meter is normally kind of ideal. Kind of in some of the race venues we've been in where it gets a bit wavier, San Francisco, Cows. That's when you want to start being a little more conservative, and you're looking at more kind of 0.7 of a meter.
What were you thinking coming down the stretch here, Ben? I mean, this is your first SailGP race. You've had so much success in Sydney. People were really excited to see how the team would perform under your leadership, and here you are. You took the first race of the second season.
Yeah, what a way to start. I mean, Sydney Harbour, 20 odd knots from the south, and thousands of spectator boats out on the course, and like I say, just real buzz sailing those boats with a fantastic team. And see the Australians coming down here phenomenal performance last season. So to be able to push those guys hard again was something from a sporting perspective. You want to be putting yourself up against the best in the sport, and felt like we were doing that and coming out doing well, and so it was, just brilliant.
Yeah, doing well. You took 4 of 5 on the way to taking the event. I think your team seemed to be in mid-season form just in this first event.
Look, we had a really, really solid series, and I put that down to the rest of the team helping me come into the boat. But the racing was a lot closer than that, and in all ways, people always say that when they come out, when they get a win, but it was closer than it looked. It really was, and we were only ever one mistake away from losing races. And in SailGP, the top 2 boats go into the final match race, so it's winner takes all in that final race. So you have to perform the whole way through. There's no let up, and certainly felt to me and the guys on our boat that we were pushed all the way, and we have to make some big improvements for the next race, and keep working hard, because all these teams are going to be, the talent that they got on board, they're going to be developing incredibly well. And we've got to try and stay up there, stay on top.
Yeah. Emily, when you looked at the post-race analysis from this first race in Sydney, what did you learn? What did it tell you most?
It kind of just reinforces what Ben says, and the fact that, all the teams really were so close. I mean, we did pretty well, but so did a lot of the newer teams that also joined. I mean, you've got the Spanish and the Danish who, this was their first time in the boat. Very limited experience in the 50s in general, not coming from previous cup campaigns. And the Spanish would have been giving the Aussies quite a run for their money in order to get into that final match race had it not been for that collision. So what a lot of the data really showed was just, the different strengths of all the teams in different conditions. In training with USA, they were really strong a lot of the time with their maneuvers. And likewise, the Spanish were pretty bloody quick for the conditions, and it was just their maneuvers that let them down at times. So there'll definitely be a few teams to be watching as the events go on next year.
And to wrap it all up, Ben, with all of this technology and information now available, thanks to the Oracle Cloud infrastructure and all of the data that you're able to generate, how is this changing the sport of sailing?
It is really, like we've seen in other sports and other industries, it's transformative. I mean, the first practice day we went out to watch some of the other teams, it wasn't our turn to train on the water, if you like. So we went out in one of the chase boats to watch, and Emily was with us, and she started suddenly talking to me about the performance of the teams that we were watching, and I had no idea that this was even possible. I said, where are you getting that from? And brought out the handheld data, wearable, and I think it was maybe the Danish team and the American team that we were watching, and we could see their ride height, their turn rates, how their sails were being trimmed, and I was completely blown away by that technology, and it helped me massively, and helped our team in that development for that race. And as Emily says, it will help us massively going through the rest of the seasons ahead and developing as a team.
Well, it was very exciting to watch. Ben, thank you so much. Emily, thank you as well for taking us through the opening race in Sydney. It was a great weekend, and congratulations once again on your first SailGP victory.
Thanks. Great talking with you.
Thanks for having us.